Thank you, Glenn. So well done. I suspect that I thought I might start by just going to this slide here, which was my second slide, and probably to recap what everyone else has said, because it had, I thought those talks were incredibly interesting and absolutely resonate in what happens with me when I'm sitting in my office day in, day out, dealing with the issues that arise from clinical management and, most importantly, communication. The topic for tonight is an excellent one. So I thought I would just echo some of the discussion that you've already heard. George, everything you said, your anecdotes, I think anecdotes are always very interesting, aren't they? The issues arising from challenging authority and people's preparedness to do that. What do we do about that? I think it is a real issue. We do have claims associated with things that didn't happen because someone was too scared to say something. We've got legal expenses matters that come because someone has been inappropriate in the way that they have responded to someone who has been brave enough to say something. So there are a number of issues that need to be worked on, and I think a lot of training that needs to be done, probably from a very junior level in relation to that. Di, absolutely, what you had to say about the work with nurses and communication within teams. I got to work today, I had meetings in the morning, I sat down, I thought, oh my goodness, I've got so much to do. At 1 o'clock I received a phone call from the nursing home where my mum's residing to say that my mum had been taken into the Royal Adelaide. So I attempted to download a few emails and then decided that I was completely distracted, and I spent some quality time in the accident and emergency department at the Royal Adelaide a couple of hours ago, which is not the point of this discussion, but the point is that my observation on the way that the nurses in the Royal Adelaide were communicating with each other and working as a team was really, truly outstanding. My observation of the handover between the medical practitioners and the way that they were interacting with everyone was really outstanding. I didn't see any frustration. I didn't see any rolling eyes. I didn't see any huffiness. I saw some security guards. So that was sort of my experience on the way nurses interact. We certainly have claims, though, associated with the way in which nurses interact with doctors, the way nurses interact with each other, and some claims where very significant consequences for a patient, where nurses haven't, allegedly, passed on really important information of their observations, or they have passed it on, but the doctor hasn't taken a note of it or has been otherwise distracted, with some catastrophic outcomes for some of these patients. The issues you identified about culture, English as a second language, the importance of communications within teams and also with your patient, generational challenges, the mobile workforce that we all work in with these days, and the challenges of electronic health records. Ewan, most of the comments that you made are going to be explored in the case studies, which I'm sure you're really going to enjoy. The concept of making sure your patients actually understand what you're saying. I know that's hard to sort of say, well, do they really understand? The checking, the talkback thing is very, very helpful. The importance of giving your patients time and remembering that they are your patients, and that should be numero uno. Failure to personalise, I thought that was really, really interesting. That's what my children do. They don't personalise anymore. It tears my hair out. They can't even talk, my kids, and I've spent some amount of money educating them, but they don't appear to be able to actually communicate or talk anymore. And I think that's coming through in the workplaces, because we all work in workplaces. Involving other people, so the concepts of making a general, for surgeons, making sure doing your best to engage with the general practitioner, communicate with the general practitioner, remembering that there are larger teams, there are teams and there are larger teams, and the problems with system failures. Santosh, you identified a problem, put in place a system to fix that problem. obviously making really good steps with that. And I suppose my last comment, which I made up while I was sitting there, and I'll get to my slides, which will only take 2 minutes, I promise. There is no replacement for meaningful conversation. You can't do that through a medical record. A conversation and a document are two completely different things, serving two different, similar but different and interrelated purposes, but you can't have one without the other. That's really important, and obviously very important from where I sit, where I get it at the back end after the damage is done, often. So these were written sort of yesterday before I heard all of this, so I've nailed it. Go me. We do some analysis. So with our claims and the things that come through, we spend at work 85% of our time just troubleshooting problems with our doctors. Often there isn't a bad patient outcome. I mean, 85% of the stuff that we deal with is just issues and solving problems and providing the legal answer to a medico-legal issue. But with those files that do become claims or do become a something, whether it be an issue before the medical board, before a complaints commissioner, before there's a lawyer and there's a claim, then we analyse some of the key factors that sit behind that. And you can see, like in 25%, if you add 19%, and in 29%, add 19 and 10, communication, consenting issues are unearthed as a genuine medico-legal problem. Documentation also can be a problem. Things weren't written down, things were written down. Too much was written down. You can't see the wood for the trees anymore. In some of the general practitioner things, you don't even know whether medical record's real because it's electronic and it auto-populates. So, your consultation was 5 minutes. How can you have extracted all of this information? Oh, you didn't. It's an auto-dump. I wonder which bits you actually did. Those sorts of things. Challenges. So these will come out in our case studies. Communication with who? Well, the first person you need to communicate with is the patient. That actually sometimes gets a little bit lost, but there can be some other, there might be reasons why you need to communicate with others. The patient might not have capacity. You might need to involve some other people because you're thinking your patient doesn't understand. Unrealistic expectations. This was certainly touched on by some of the other panellists. Ewan, I think, might have been about patients not actually understanding what their prognosis is. Patients not actually understanding what the outcome of this surgical procedure might mean. I've got a file where there was a shoulder procedure, and the doctor explained, regrettably in quite complex medical terms, what the outcome of this necessary operation may well be, which meant that the patient wasn't going to be able to lift their arm above shoulder height. But the patient didn't get that, so they can't do their hair, they can't hang the clothes on the line, they can't get to the top cupboards. The patient did not understand, because it hadn't been explained to them in lay terms, what the outcome was going to be. So it came as a shock, and it came as if the operations failed, and now I can't do this, and if I'd known this was going to happen, I wouldn't have had it, or I would have thought about it, or I would have had it at a different time. Those sorts of issues. So unrealistic expectations. Be clear, speak in lay language. Be realistic about what can be achieved. Be realistic about outcomes. And then pay special attention to people that are vulnerable. Aged people like my mum, young people not like my children used to be, people with mental health conditions, people that have carers, people that for whatever reason might need to be dealt with in a way which is just a little bit outside of the square. So there you go, that's me.